Karle Kun Bashansga, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. I'm delighted to be here with you. My name is Salvador Leal, and I come from Mexico City. It is an immense honor for me to be the only participant from Latin America in this first Astana International Forum. Before we enter into the discussions of this panel, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished panelists who bring a wealth of expertise and diverse perspectives to the table. First, we have Alibek Khuantyrov, Minister of National Economy from Kazakhstan. Thank you, sir. Danir Amanaliev, he's co-founder and chairman of Kyrgyzstan's Creative Industries Association. Thank you so much. David Parrish, an expert in the creative industries and the author of the claim book T-shirts and Suits. David, thank you. Tita Larasati, a lecturer and researcher from the Institute Technology Bandung. Thank you, Tita, for being here. And Habib Hassan, the director of the Division for Transition and Developed Countries at WIPO. Thank you so much. I would like to extend a special recognition to Mr. Khuantyrov, who holds the very special position of heading the organizations of this Astana International Forum. His leadership and commitment to fostering international dialogue, it's truly commendable. We are very grateful for his instrumental role in bringing together this diverse panel of experts and creating a platform for meaningful exchange. Thank you so much, sir. Let's begin. The British government's innovation agency, Nesta, has aptly defined the creative economies as those sectors that harness creative talent for commercial purpose. These dynamic economies offer 30 million jobs opportunity worldwide, employing more young people aged 15 to 25 years than any other sector. Globally, their annual exports exceed 215 billion and contribute up to 10% of GDP in certain nations. Over the past 4 decades, we have witnessed an evolution from the initial notion of cultural industries, which predominantly encompassed factories and machinery, to the broader concept of creative industries. This expanded scope now includes areas that were not traditionally considered cultural, but that are integral to the creative realm, such as video games and advertising. Subsequently, we entered the era termed the Orange Economy by the IDB, before embracing the present comprehensive, ecosystemic, fluid, and pluralistic notion of economies of creativity. These economies comprise human activities wherein talent and innovative skills of individuals or associations serve as the primary input, ultimately translating into the creation of goods and services protected by intellectual property laws. Now, you may wonder why a Mexican has been entrusted with moderating this panel. The creative sector stands as one of the most robust and flourishing components of Mexican economy. Mexico proudly ranks among the top 20 global exporters of cultural goods and services, a distinction that no other Latin America country shares. Despite the challenges posed by the pandemic, recent indicators from various organizations indicate that Mexico's financial stability persists, with an increase in foreign investment and a growing internal market. Additionally, Mexico boasts a predominantly young population, a demographic that exhibits a heightened consumption of cultural goods and products. Both federal and state policies have been progressively bolstering support for the creative sector, while public and private educational programs are actively promoting the growth of the creative economy and the professionalization of its workforce. Although Mexico acknowledged the need to update its communications and technology infrastructure and achieve a more balanced distribution, the country, my country, is diligently advancing towards enhanced international competitiveness. In conclusion, I stand here today humbled by the opportunity to moderate this distinguished panel of experts from across the globe. Together, we shall explore the multifaceted dimension of the creative economies, their significance, and their potential to shape our collective future. Thank you for your attention. Let's begin, if you may, with Mr. Alibek Khuantyrov. He is, as I said, Minister for National Economy here in Kazakhstan. Mr. Khuantyrov, first question I would like to ask you. What financial and non-financial measures do you think facilitate creative industries that will help in creative and attractive investment environment in the future?
Thank you. Well, it's a first pleasure to meet you all here at this session, and I'm very pleased to also have these distinguished speakers here. And I have your book, Mr. David Parrish, which is T-shirts and suits, and signed. I'm very, very grateful for that. That has been signed to you. Well, I think we have entered already in a new global trend of creative economy, and in terms of GDP, the share in GDP of creative economy, so at average, it's around 3%, the median figures in the world, and some countries stimulated the creative economy to such an extent that they already have 12% of GDP, and for example, in our country, altogether, if we take the creative industry, it's 2.7%. And of course, every country in the world, and I'm sure 100% of that, even 200%, has the potential for creative industries, because the main driver of the creative industry is people, especially younger people. For example, in Kazakhstan, 33% of the population are children. So there is really a great potential for them, because they are easily educated, they are also easily influenced. And so we should find a mixture to have a good influence on our children, on the whole society. So many goals, both financial and non-financial. We also have this cultural and other goals that we need to achieve. And developed countries have realized the great potential of the creative economy, both with financial and non-financial measures, and I think so pretty much all the same instruments should be used in each country. And this is usually subsidization. So in our country, we subsidize some of the creative industry. Some of them have already been included in the priority list. They get additional funding for subsidize the interest rates from the national budget. And some of them are supported by also some non-budget sources, like from relevant businessmen, from prominent businessmen, and also from international organizations. And we should foster this tradition. And in general, what we need to do from the government side is to get rid of all the hindrances that we have. It's mostly about people who will foster this industry. And our goal is to eradicate all unnecessary barriers for that. It's not only about the creative industry. We're talking about all the SMEs, all the individual and entrepreneurs. Our goal is to cut down all which is unnecessary, all the non-tariff barriers, so to say. For example, last year was dedicated to analysis of more than 150,000 requirements to businesses in Kazakhstan. We're just talking about the national level. What we found is that more than 10,000 requirements were proved to be unnecessary. So they are out of date, they should be modernized, or they should be totally guillotined. So including the creative industry, like in the cinema industry and others. And now we are doing the work. Half of them, 5,000 requirements, have already been eradicated, what could be done by bylaws, and now we have a draft law that is doing the rest, the getting rid of the rest. And then we will continue this job at local levels. So financial measures are understandable. And of course, we should work on interest rates. They must be, so market interest rates are quite high. And this year, last year, so we had record inflation. And mostly it's about non-financial measures. If we minimize all the barriers, or of course, ideally eradicate them all, because this industry should develop in a competitive market. So the more competitive it is, the more talents will be involved, and the industry will create itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I have another question for you. Blogging has become a trend in the last few years. Bloggers have become popular figures and opinion leaders. Do you think it is necessary to regulate their activities at the legislative level within the law on advertising being discussed?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, what I should say, it also concerns some part of bloggers, but also maybe some mass media. It's a global trend. It's fake news. And by the way, fake news is also being discussed at this forum. There was even a trend, last year in Germany when people started using less internet or mass media websites and other digital instruments, in the news, to take information from, but bought more and more physical papers, newspapers, in order to evade the fake news trend. Unfortunately, we do have so. And in Kazakhstan, for example, we have at least 3 bloggers with more than 5 million subscribers. What we are talking here is that there might be a negative effect, a negative impact of some bloggers on public opinion, a negative one. We're not talking about freedom of speech, right, in the way it should be in a democratic country. So I should say that Kazakhstan is very open, and it has been so open, and the freedom of mass media has been so widely spread that we encountered a problem. So, because the government, different authorities are always criticized, almost always criticized for whatever they do. It could be they can have the fundamental but also there are many cases when they do not. In any way they are criticized. It forms the public opinion. And it's not only about the government. The main issue here, there should be no impact, no negative impact on our young people, on senior people who get involved, unfortunately, sometimes in financial pyramids that are advertised by influential bloggers. So of course such cases should be regulated. Public opinion must be, it should be taken into account, but it should be done in a way that will not harm the whole society. Macroeconomically, psychologically, also physiologically. So, and we should use the creative economy to bring right messages into the heads of our young people and those who get involved and those who get, could be insulted in many ways. So this is part of our economy. This should be developed further, but at the same time, we also need to, to fix some other targets that we have.
Thank you so much, sir. Daniel, let's go with you, if you please. Tell us about a little bit the history of the Kyrgyzstan's Association of Creative Industries and some of the results that you have had in all these years.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to say that I'm very happy that we have this session on this important forum, because I don't think that many people in Central Asia know about creative economy, creative industries, and myself, I learned about it here in Astana 5 years ago when British Council started the Creative Central Asia forums. And they were extremely important, and I think that in Central Asia, this is our main chance to leapfrog in our development and to get rid of dependence on the resources, on maybe some big partners that we have at the moment. And what I want to tell you about Kyrgyzstan is that starting from this year, if you have a creative business, you should move it to Kyrgyzstan. We will have the lowest taxes in the world for all creative industries. So what we are trying to do there is a very interesting experiment. We call it Creative Industries Park. And it's actually called a park, but it's a virtual park. So this is taxation, you go register your business in a special entity, and then you pay these low taxes wherever you stay in our country. And this thing, it's from the grassroots. It's an initiative that comes from the private sector. And I'm proud to be the chairman of the Creative Industries Association that initiated this. And this idea came from the Creative Central Asia Network. It's a large network of entrepreneurs around all Central Asia. And we were making a very interesting document called Creative Economy Roadmap, Creative Economy Development Roadmap for Central Asia. And in this roadmap, while we were discussing what steps we should take in Central Asia to develop creative economy, and this, as I said, is the main chance for us to leapfrog, we realized that the step number one is competition. So competition is very important because many companies in our sector consider each other as competitors, and they don't want to interact much. So, like we discussed with Mr. Habib before the session, we don't have too many associations in this region, right? So I'm very proud that our association is this association with paid membership, with 80 plus members currently. And while we are competitors, at the same time we cooperate when we want to lobby something. We collaborate when we create common standards for the industry, and we are clients to each other, which is also very important, because if we have money movement between us, it makes our relationship much more, meaningful, because we have skin in the game, not because we just make money on each other. So competition is very important. That's why we started with the association. And why I saw that we need this association is because my business, Ololo Creative Hubs, is the largest chain of creative hubs in Central Asia now. We have 9 spaces, more than 1,000 innovators that we unite. We are basically like coral reefs for innovators. And we see that a lot of these innovators, they struggle with the current tax regime, which was created, which is like inherited from the Soviet times. In the Soviet times, the labor cost was quite small. The main cost was, resources, capital, like buying machines and etc., building factories. So what we have now, both in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and in Russia and in many other post-Soviet countries, is that we have very high taxes and social fund taxes on labor, which is killing creative industries. Because in creative industries, 80% of cost is labor. That's why we came up with the idea of the Creative Industries Park, and we did that as an association.
Let me get that straight. It's kind of an economic special zone, this park?
Yeah, so it's a virtual park. We call it park, but basically you go register and you can work in any part of the country. And it's very important to keep it virtual because creative industries should be very, very flexible. They should not be tied to a certain location. And in our countries, it's very difficult to develop creative business, because here people don't appreciate things they cannot touch. And we understand the main value in the world is non-tangible value now. And we have Diana Coyle on this forum. I'm very happy about that because I read her a lot, and she always says that nowadays about 77% of the GDP, in fact, is not measurable. So it consists of things that we cannot measure. Moreover, she says that the professions in which productivity can be easily measured will be replaced by robots. So what do we have as humans left now with AI developing much faster than we expected? So creative economy is really, really important, and it's very important to change the culture here and to change the narrative and explain people that creative doesn't mean something bad, because here many people believe that. I don't know, if you say I'm a creative entrepreneur, they would say, you're hopeless. It means you're not paying taxes, avoiding taxes. Yeah. You're creative about cheating the government. Are you talking about that? That's how people perceive. And we need to change that urgently, otherwise we will not develop.
And how do you think this park experience can be used in other countries, or can get to other countries?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a very interesting technology that many other countries, especially in the Global South, can adopt. And I think in the Global South, we have a little bit different situation from the Global North. While in Global North, yes, I know that a lot of direct subsidies work. And like during the COVID, almost 2 billion pounds were distributed to creative industries just in Great Britain alone. And that was, of course, that helped a lot of theaters, museums to survive. And it was very important, but in the Global South, first of all, we usually don't have this money, our governments. And secondly, most of the countries in the Global South are very corrupted countries. So when you talk about direct subsidies, often case, this money doesn't go to right hands. They go to the hands of relatives, friends, right people, not the people who are the most efficient, I would say. So I think Kyrgyzstan, being a very small country, we are just 7 million population, not a very big size country, and not too much to lose economically, really, because we are 6 times behind GDP per capita of Kazakhstan, for example, our neighbors. I think we are a very good laboratory for experiments. We can try new things, we can move very fast. I don't think there are many countries in the world where private initiative of creating a new law, new taxes, would be able to be lobbied within 2 years. And that's what we did in Kyrgyzstan. So now the law on creative industries passed. The changes into taxation passed. We only are expecting one decree from the Cabinet of Ministers to be signed. Maybe it will be done next week. So it's very, very close. Everything is ready, just need to be signed. And then we'll start creating this thing. So until the end of this year, as I said, we'll have the best taxes for creative industries.
It almost hits me like it's a startup public policy kind of failing fast and move on and be very agile and prove new things and have some that work and the ones that do not just toss it away.
Yeah, thank you. You know, Kyrgyzstan is a very special country. We had 3 revolutions since gaining independence in 1991. So we are very agile. We are very anti-fragile, I would say, because we can survive, we can adapt. Last year, we were invaded by a neighboring country. It was terrible. We had COVID, we had revolutions, as I said, we had looting. But the nation, you know, learned to be very, very horizontally tight. Like we have a population that helps each other a lot. We are very good in it, and we are very good in distributing information, technologies, new knowledge. And as I said, it's also a very small nation. So I think the positioning of Kyrgyzstan in the future is that it will be a great experimentary lab. And I think a lot of our bigger neighbors, like Kazakhstan, for example, will take our examples and move on. Like, for example, we had this special taxes for IT sector called High Tech Park in 2011. And now Kazakhstan adopted this and created Astana Hub, which is even a better tax regime than in Kyrgyzstan. And I'm glad about that. I think as neighbors, we should not be competing. We should be cooperating. We should be competing.
Okay. Thank you so much, Danir. David, if you may, what are the emerging, let's go a little bit more general and global. What are the emerging trends and challenges in the global creative industries, and how can countries, you think, can adapt to them to promote sustained and inclusive growth? That is the name of this panel.
It's a good question, and I think that, I mean, first of all, we need to be clear what we mean by the creative industries. You explained, Salvador, in your introduction. And I found in my time that we've talked about the cultural industries and then the creative industries. And nowadays, I tend to use the term creative and digital industries. And I think that's, in short, one of the answers to your question, the huge amount of digitization that's taken place. So the businesses and organizations I help range from theaters to computer games developers, designers of all kinds, musicians, publishers, film and TV. producers. So it's a very wide range, but digitization has certainly influenced all of those trends. And my background is in book publishing, and it's interesting, even in recent years, with the 2 books I've written, the first one, T-shirts and Suits, A Guide to the Business of Creativity, was written and designed as a paperback book. Subsequently, it became an e-book, and you can download it from my website, and also an audio book. But it is primarily designed as a paperback. I think it was only 7 years later that I wrote my second book, Chase One Rabbit, Strategic Marketing for Business Success, also written particularly for creative people. But this was designed actually as an e-book that you can read on your phone. So the structure is different, and it's broken down into small sections you can read in 5 or 10 minutes while you're waiting for a taxi, with some action points. Because our attention spans are becoming smaller, we want smaller, bite-sized chunks, and this book was designed primarily as an e-book. So that's one change, and it's also a paperback. As you can see, I'm holding a physical object, but that was, I wouldn't say an afterthought, but it was a second level, and also an audio book if you want to hear me reading it in my British accent. And another interesting thing about digitization, again using my book as an example, if you want to buy this paperback, the physical book from Amazon, you can go and find it, and it will say in stock. And you might imagine a huge warehouse with pallets and piles of this book ready to be sent out. Not at all. It's actually a digital file that they hold. So there's no physical production, there's no cost, there's no storage, until somebody wants to buy one copy, and then they can print one copy and send it to you. If somebody wants 1 million copies, I wish, then they could print 1 million equally quickly. So that's just one example using books as, of how digitization is happening. Another thought is that I was in New Zealand helping creative entrepreneurs. It's a very small country in terms of population, so they have to think immediately about export. Their businesses, even from the startup stage, have to think, how are we going to export? Whereas in bigger countries like my own country, UK or USA, you can develop your business for years just using the local market, and then at a later stage think about exports. And the easiest way to export is to export a digital product. And that's certainly the way I'm thinking within the businesses I have and I help, because it's just easier than dealing with all this stuff, this physical stuff you have to move around the world in warehouses and containers and all the rest of it. So I think digitization is one very good example. I think customers also want to be involved. They don't want to be just passive consumers. You know, we no longer go to cinemas so much. We prefer to watch on Netflix from the comfort of our own home, not only because it's easier and cheaper and more comfortable, but we can decide when we watch, how we watch it. We can vote on TV shows. We can be part of the creative process with things like Lego that have opened up the sourcing of ideas to crowdsourcing. And finally, I would say that the challenges for the creative industries, although they're different in every country, sure, they are very similar as well. And I remember in Colombia, they were saying, David, in Colombia we have particular challenges for the creative industries. Firstly, access to capital. Secondly, the management of intellectual property. And thirdly, marketing. And when they said that, I had to smile. And I said, Colombia, you're not so special. Because I hear this everywhere I go. These are universal challenges, obviously in different degrees, and there are different nuances in different countries. So I think that that's my, my answer to your question.
And I think I can continue with that train of thought, because how do you think the governments and the organizations better support creative entrepreneurs in accessing markets and expanding their networks internationally, given these challenges that you mentioned?
I think the best thing for governments to do is to create an environment, a legal environment, an economic environment, an infrastructure environment that enables creative industries to thrive and then sort of get out of the way. And those things would be making it easier to set up companies. In some countries, including my own, I could set up a limited company in 20 minutes, very low cost, online. In other countries, even in Europe, it's much more complex. So I think we should be able to set up companies in order to do business more quickly. I think tax breaks are great, and we've heard the pitch from Kyrgyzstan about how we should all go there because tax is reduced, and I think that's a great idea. Fewer bureaucratic burdens on exporters, and Britain has done the opposite actually with Brexit. You know, it's now much more difficult to export to Europe than it used to be, which is not a clever move in my view. And the other option to attract talent to countries is with these digital nomad visas. So a lot of creative businesses start with one person working online with their laptop. A favorite place for digital nomads used to be Thailand and still is. But even in recent months, and I'm talking this year, the African country of Namibia has established a digital nomad visa. In other words, if you want to work on your computer, developing software or a creative business online, come to Namibia, you know, contribute to our economy, and we'll make getting a visa easier for you. So they're just a few things governments can do.
Thank you, David. A couple of more questions, even more deep into your expertise. What role does innovation play in the creative economy, and how it can be fostered to drive this sustained growth and competitiveness?
Well, I think innovation is right at the heart of the creative industries. The word creativity, you know, is right there in the definition of the term. So I think that creating new things, thinking differently, innovating is right at the heart of pretty much all of the creative industries. So it's crucial. But I also think we have to be very careful with this word creativity. It's a brilliant word, but it means different things to different people. Therefore, it could lead to confusion. And for some people, the word creativity implies only artistic creativity. So if I say to a business, I will deliver a creativity workshop for your executives, they might imagine I'm going to come along with pens and paper and do some kind of art class on a Friday afternoon, and they're not interested. On the other hand, if I say, I can help you improve profits, innovate more, outmaneuver your competition, be more agile, move more quickly, respond to customer demand using new ideas and innovation, they are interested. So maybe I would avoid the word creativity in that respect because of this potential confusion and the implications that the word has to mean only artistic creativity. And it's a thing that bothered me for years, actually. It niggled and it upset me how this word means different things to different people. So when I was invited to give a talk at TEDx in Naples, in Italy, I suggested we have two different terms for the word creativity. A new word, creativity, using the letter A for artistic creativity. And we know what that is. That's the artists, the poets, the sculptors, the musicians, etc. That's very clear. But I also suggest we invent another word called I creativity, using the letter I, meaning ingenuity, invention, innovation. Because this kind of creativity is in all fields of human endeavor, not just with creative industries. It happens, this kind of creativity happens in agriculture, in education, in warfare, in healthcare, and indeed in banking. There's all this kind of I creativity. So I think we should acknowledge both, and the lesson for me, for the creative industries, is that I say to the clients and the enterprises I help, yes, you're clearly immensely creative in your studio when you're making computer games or designing a new dance routine or publishing books or making films. Clearly you're creative there. But you can be creative in the business office as well. You can be creative in the way that you do business, using different business models, including co-opetition, which has already been mentioned earlier. So I think we can be immensely creative in the way that we do business in the office, not only in the studio.
Thank you, David. And one final question for you that I think it hits on the center of the main topic of your books. How can creative entrepreneurs balance artistic expression and commercial viability in their business models, and what are the strategies that can help them thrive in both aspects?
It's a great question, because I think a lot of people think that you have to have a choice, that you can do amazing creative things but remain poor, or if you want to get rich, you have to sell your soul to the devil and sell out on your artistic and creative principles and just do ordinary, boring stuff. And that used to be the way I thought when I set up my first businesses. That goes back a long way, by the way. I'm not as young as I look. You have to imagine me, back in the last century, actually, with hair, long hair and a beard, setting up a business. And I thought that, we had to choose between being true to our values, on the one hand, and poor, or profitable and selling out. And I think even now some creative people think that way, but my lesson from my experience, for what I know, is that if we are smart with the business models we choose, we can have the best of both worlds. We can be successful creatively and commercially. And the way we do that is by combining their creative talent and passion with smart business thinking. And that's the meaning of the metaphor I use when I talk about T-shirts and suits. T-shirts means the cool creative people doing amazing stuff in their studio. The word suits representing smart business thinking. Because I know that when we pull those two things together, it's an extremely powerful marriage that leads to amazing offspring. So I think that's the lesson I talk about in my keynote speeches at conferences, when I'm advising businesses individually, when I'm running workshops. It's all about not selling out, but being smart by choosing the right business models. And when we talk about creative business models, one of them is indeed co-opetition. Daniel beat me to it. You mentioned it earlier. This is a hybrid word where you collaborate or cooperate with your competitors. And the creative industries is full of that, because we have to bring together teams. We have to find the right photographer combined with the right video maker, the right scriptwriter, etc., to make a film or even a website. So I think that's one. Another one is about intellectual property. And I'm sure we'll hear more from other experts about how we can use intellectual property to not only to protect our creations using copyright and trademarks and patents, but how we can make money while we sleep. And when I talk about making money while you sleep, that wakes up the audiences when I speak at big conferences, because everybody wants to do that. And we can do that by licensing intellectual property. And it's those businesses that have intellectual property which is protected and licensable who are the most profitable. And it's a model I use as part of my business as well. So I think there are a couple. And the third one would be the freemium business model. It's a very old model actually, but it has new meanings nowadays. And it's a combination of free and premium. And everybody here has a smartphone. A lot of the apps will be the free apps, but they have in-app purchases. Or you can upgrade to the pro version. So by giving something away free, you can make a lot of money later. And that's the reason, by the way, that my book, T-Shirts and Suits, is free on my website to download in English. It's partly because I do want to share these ideas with the world. I'm happy to give it away as a gift to the world, if that doesn't sound too corny. But it's also my advertising. And because it was available, somebody in Taiwan found it. They gave me a phone call and said, David, we love your book. We want your permission to translate it into traditional Chinese. We will pay you a licensing fee, of course. And we want you to come to the book launch in Taipei. And while you're there, we want you to speak at a conference of designers, and of course we will pay you and fly you business class. And when you're here in Taipei for a week or two, you can deliver a workshop for young entrepreneurs, because another organization wants to sponsor that. So it turned out to be a good move business-wise for me to give my book away for free. So maybe I'm not as stupid as I look by making it free on my website. So yeah, I think that's what I do. Last time I was in Kazakhstan, I was in Almaty working with Impact Hub, delivering a workshop, making a speech, and giving advice to creative organizations, startups, businesses, and how they can combine their creative talents with smart business thinking. That is the secret. That's what I mean by T-shirts and suits, and I've seen it work successfully all over the world.
Thank you so much, David. I would like to take a moment just to acknowledge the presence of Ambassador José Luis Martínez. He is the ambassador of Mexico and Turkey, concurrent to Kazakhstan, and he's a distinguished expert in cultural matters. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm very honored to have you here, to have among us, Ambassador. Tita Dewita Larasati, she is a researcher at the Institute Technology Bandung. She's an expert council, a member of Global Creative Economy Council. Tita, how has Indonesia's experience in development and implementing the creative economy's frameworks and policies has contributed to promoting sustained and inclusive growth in the economy? What are the lessons that we can learn from this approach that you have very thoroughly and worked in?
Right. It has been a long journey, and we have a lot of changes and development, of course, because, well, as a nation, I think most of us did. We have been consuming and producing products and services based on human creativity, culture, and intelligence. But it was only when creative economy became a term that is included in the government structure that we start to think about how to implement it as policy methods and so on. In Indonesia itself, it was, I think it started to be official around the year 2009, where our Minister of Trade, she wanted to have a kind of creative economy development in our 10 provinces. And the term creative economy wasn't like today. We didn't know what it was. So after the research in our governmental term, 2010-2013, creative economy is included in the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy. And they say there are 14 subsectors of creative industries inside. Subsectors means those film, architecture, design, and so on and so on. But it changed in 2015. So in 2014, actually, so with the change of the national government, I was involved in the working group for Transition House about defining what creative economy is for Indonesia. Because Indonesia it has a particular challenge because of its width. It has 17,000 islands, 280 million people. So our challenges is always equal distribution of products and services. It's always logistics, and it's always basic service like education, health, and so on. So how would we start with the creative economy, and how would we make sure that it is influentially positive for whole islands? Of course, it's not easy. But then, when we set this concept in 2014, we tend to perceive creative economy as an ecosystem. So you don't talk only about the transaction part where you sell products and so on, but you also talk about the capacity of human resources. You talk about the facilities that they should have if they are to be involved in these industries. So you need education, you need association, maybe you need spaces, you need financial support to grow and so on, where you produce these products and services of creative economy, and then you deliver it to the healthy market, including also not only the transaction, but also the awarding and so on. And you have the research and development part, where the people can also view their capacity. So that's why in 2015 to 2019, Creative Economy Agency was set, so it's separated from the ministry, and they have the ability to arrange their own programs. But then in 2019, it is back combined with Ministry of Tourism up to today, and it has now 17 subsectors. So with all those changes up at the national level, at the subnational level, province, cities, regencies of Indonesia, they don't right away have the straight line of command. So you can have the ministry, but then at the city level, maybe you have different perception of how it is. So you can imagine it can be really chaotic if you don't have a local, say, agency or local communities that are really strong in this sense. We only have the National Bill on Creative Economy in 2019, so it was quite late because we produced the roadmap strategic planning first in 2018. So after that, we follow of course, it's the highest hierarchy for bills. So we follow the Creative Economy Bill that actually a bit make a distinguish between creative economy and culture, because we also have culture bill. And for creative economy, we say it's all products and services with added value, with the potential of intellectual property right, and most likely is influenced by the advancement of technology. So that's the plan that we are following up to the level. But then Indonesia is attempting to take the leading in this sector by initiating the World Conference on Creative Economy that was held in Bali first in 2018. And the purpose is to actually make a connection between these policies at the global level, national level, with the all other stakeholders. So how would you connect that, or how can we learn from each other? Because we're also inviting, for example, countries that also consider creative economy as among the strategy to develop, such as Korea and fellow countries in ASEAN countries also, like Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and so on. So the conversation went on, and the Bali agenda then result was, one of them is the year of 2021 as the year of creative economy for sustainable development. And then WCC continued. It was hosted in Dubai. It should be in 2020, but because of the pandemic, it was held in 2021 along with the World Expo. And last time, WCC was in Bali again, and it was the side event of G20, and it resulted in Bali Roadmap for Creative Economy that actually provide options depending on which part of the world you are, that you want to take the creative economy into. Is it more heavy into the intellectual property or the indigenous culture, and so on and so on. So that's how the dynamic of creative economy. And we know that conversation of the world, especially in the recent global forum, has also taken creative economy in different discussions.
It's very interesting how you have managed this in a local way, but how to escalate to an international scale? As a member of the Global Creative Economy Council, what global best practices and collaborative efforts have you observed that can enhance the role of the creative economy in driving this sustained and inclusive growth?
Yeah, there's actually this maybe global phenomena where, especially young people, they realize that they cannot rely on natural resources only as a source of income. So we call it from extraction economy to intersecting economy. So we don't always have to extract minerals from the earth, cutting trees anymore and so on. But we can use our intelligence to, as a source of income. So with this, young people usually then they form their community according to their interest. And maybe that's what today they call it startups. So they start to make something together with the groups. And this is really another different phenomena because, because I'm teaching in university, we can see that students tend to already have their own brands, make their own company, instead of working in a big company. And that is actually a different mindset, because if you are entering a company, then all ecosystem is already there. But if you're setting your own company, you're a startup, then you have to create your own ecosystem and supply chain. So in that way, we know that these young people then connect to each other because it makes them stronger. In Indonesia, the phenomena is not only happening in big cities, we know like Jakarta, Bandung, Surabaya, and so on, but it also happens in small cities, coastal cities, cities in deep in the mountain, and so on and so on. So then we gathered these communities and we create Indonesia Creative Cities Network, because we know if we talk about creative economy at the national level, it's so big, you cannot just identify everything. But then if we ground it into city level, so it's, we call it Creative City because the city is run with the creative economy at that level. And then this, because we have very different characteristics of communities and people, we make a framework that can be referred to by everyone, but then they can also adjust it to their own context. And what we wanted to do is to to give input to our government, because you know, in our system, creativity is not seen as the main interest, but because government always think about economy, measurement, and then health, education, infrastructure, and so on. Tourism, economy, and so on is always at the lowest priority. So that's why we're trying to deliver a message that you can actually build your city, your area, your region by also implementing creative economy, but in this kind of framework. So we adopt our framework to Indonesian government's KPI, so Key Performance Index. So in a way, we say that, look, if you implement our strategy, then you can also make a development progress in our city and so on. And that has been working so far, because we then produce this index of creative city, and the government can use it as a tool for decision making.
I hope that it doesn't say that some cities are not creative at all.
Yes, and it doesn't work like that, because then it's not saying that I'm more creative than you, but then the index says that in which factor or in which part you can improve to get to that level. So maybe you lack service for business, or maybe you lack security. You can see it from the indicators. So then if you refer to that, then you can see where you lack.
Tita, how, you mentioned the recognition of 2021 as the International Year of Creativity Economy for Sustainable Development. How can we leverage this moment? How these countries like Kazakhstan can leverage this momentum to foster greater cooperation and exchange in promoting sustained and inclusive growth?
Yeah, the year 2021 as the year of creative economy for sustainable development, it was announced in 2019. But then nobody knows that there will be an pandemic. So
Yeah.
in 2021, when we're supposed to really make huge programs and everything is gone. So it's not very, say, frivolous, or we cannot celebrate. But then also there's a kind of blessing in disguise that the pandemic taught us what is really priority for us. If people start to think one thing over another, what do I live for? So here is where creative economy can see what sector of industry actually thrive during the pandemic. So you can see people start going to think about wellness, they think about health, organic things, natural things, and so on. And that's actually countries like Indonesia, they still have a lot of these kind of resources. So after the pandemic, so in 2021 onwards, we tend to build on businesses that has to do with everything natural. So every day you go, since you wake up and you sleep again, you go through the day with choices that makes you healthier instead of otherwise. So there are lots of, say, change of mindset, change of lifestyle. And then people in creative economy, usually they're very quick in catching what they would do to provide these services, including the digital services to make things connect and so on, because yeah, technology helps.
Thank you so much, Tita. Let's move, last but not least, Mr. Habib Hassan. He is the Director for the Division for Transition and Development Countries at the World Intellectual and Property Organization. Mr. Hassan, what are some of the challenges faced in protecting intellectual property rights in the digital age, and how can they be addressed to foster a supportive environment for the creative economy?
Thank you very much, Salvador. First, I want to follow what the distinguished speakers actually talk about, mostly about creative industries and economy. And before that, I just want to brief you a little bit about WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization, which is one of the 15 specialized UN agencies based in Geneva. And with this, so generally, WIPO, we promote the product and use of intellectual property worldwide. And especially the economical importance of IP, which we are talking right now, including creative industries, I need to open it a little bit, which is, I think, more than what we think. Maybe to start with, like S&P 500 companies, and the 85–90% of these companies, the value of 85 and 90% of these companies, coming from the intangible assets. So they're coming from their patents, designs, creative, outputs. It was like 30, 40 years ago, it was the other way around. So that time it was like 15–20% of their value was coming from intangible assets, and 80% of the value of these companies was coming from tangible assets. Now it's the other way around. So it is that important, this what we are talking. It's the future of each country, what we are talking about. Very recent, there is a very recent study was done at the European Union Trademark and Design Office in Alicante with the European Patent Organization. It was just completed very recently. And it's in Europe, which is almost maybe most developed part of the world, IP-intensive industries, they are generating almost, including creative industries, 40% of the employment is generated by IP-intensive, industries. And also, again, in Europe, 50% of the GDP is being generated by IP creative industries. And plus, the people who work for these companies, they earn 40% more than for the other regular companies. So this IP and this creative industries is that important. And I just want to follow the President Tokayev said yesterday, which is very, very important. He said like Kazakhstan last year increased the export almost 30% export of Kazakhstan, and which is of course very good. Let's say Kazakhstan like makes around 90, $100 billion exports. And this is basically is coming from the petrol and like oil and so-called gas. And export value for oil, like per kilogram, is around $1. Let's say Kazakhstan in 10, 15 years targets to increase the export like 3 times, 300 billion US dollar. And with that value added like per kilogram with $1 or $1.5, you need to increase your production capacity 3 times, like, which is impossible. Even if you do it, you cannot find the market to sell your oil or your gas. Then the right way to do is, of course, to increase the value added per kilogram. If you have innovation, if you put, of course, with the right strategy, you create per kilogram, like not $1, but $5, with the same amount export in terms of weight, you can create 300, 400, 500 billion US dollar. So this is one of the very, very important part of the IP, which still we don't get it. And again, I'm going to give an example from Europe, and also I talked with David regarding the awareness of the startups companies. If you don't count the big corporate companies, the startups or like SMEs, they use almost less than 10%. They know the importance of the IP. How you can use IP as a catalyst to scale up your business, to create new jobs, and to so-called to use it for the economic growth of the country. So there are a lot of things to be done there in terms of awareness. And in WIPO right now, in WIPO, what we are doing is we are a technical agency. WIPO is a technical agency, but we want to move now WIPO to more like development agency. And in all our projects and activities with member states, we are transferring these from standalone, one-time standalone activities to more medium and long-term and impactful so-called project-based activities. And to do this, of course, when we say, maybe even if I ask in this audience, what is IP, what is patent, trademarks, most of them, I am sure that maybe there are some experts, but the awareness level is very low there. So this is some kind of like mystic, term. So one of our priorities is to demystify IP, that everybody can understand IP. So we want to bring IP on the grassroots level, and to have this more inclusive for women, for SMEs, for youth. They can understand IP and they can use IP to scale up their business, to use it as a leverage in national and international era. And so we are designing all these activities with member states with this vision. And with this, now I want to maybe stop here. And then, if you have some additional questions, I'm happy to follow up.
Yes, absolutely, because I think intellectual property is very powerful for the fostering of creative economy. It's so how these IP policies and mechanisms can be tailored to promote innovation and to promote creativity in these countries like Kazakhstan, countries
So So, of course, the magical term, as it was also used here, is the collaboration, cooperation, international level. We need to adjust, we need to amend the international treaties that on IP which we have this patent cooperation treaty, Madrid, protocol, Paris Convention, Bern Convention, which is mostly about the creative industries, and plus, of course, IP protection, which is very, very important to prevent the piracy, the counterfeited product, and so it needs to be very, so-called active international cooperation, collaboration, which we are trying for it, and it is not very easy. And then during the last General Assemblies, it took place in Geneva last year in July. Very important two decisions, were taken by member states. One of them is to have a diplomatic conference on IGC. This is mostly about the genetic resources, cultural expressions, which it will take place at the end of the 2024. And the other one is, again, to have an international diplomatic conference on the design treaty. So these are some of the examples that now international community is trying to so-called, harmonize and have international so-called system in pipe. So we can use the benefit of IP, and we can use IP to create jobs and, of course, to increase the GDP of the whole world. Just to give you one of the discussion right now, which is going on, like the inflation is very high, this geopolitical, problems in different parts of the world, and this climate change, and it was also very important part of this discussions here yesterday, today. And can we have in the medium and the long term innovation-based sustainable development? This is very, very important because there are some signs that in the recent years we don't have so-called groundbreaking inventions. Most of the inventions we have, they are like more technology adaptations. And this, and with this increasing inflation and the geopolitical instabilities and regional problems, and there are some reports and some people think that maybe in the medium term and long term, we may have problem regarding having a sustainable, innovation-based sustainable economic development, which is of course very, very bad for the future of the whole world. And but on the other hand, there are some discussions with the digitalization and with the AI. Maybe we will talk about that a little bit later. The human kind, we will have again new opportunities, and we will have so-called new jobs, new professions, and new inventions. This will, of course, we will have innovation-based economic development, so which we will have in the future. And so the collaboration is very, very important in the economical area. The awareness activities, of course, and education with the stakeholders and in the universities, in the so-called the innovation ecosystem, what kind of model we should use regarding the governmental institutions, non-governmental institutions, and public-private partnership. So these are some of the very, very important problems we need to work on it, we need to tackle for sustainable economic development.
Excellent. I was supposed to open the floor for questions, but I'm afraid we are almost done with the panel time. But I just want to ask that question that was in our internal meetings and discussions when we were preparing this panel about, well, the hot topic of AI. And it's a hot topic all around the world in every sector, but I think creative economies are especially affected for AI. And I would like to begin with you, Mr. Hassan. How do you see AI in this current situation and maybe in the future for creative economies?
Yeah, it's very hot topic now we are discussing, and like one of the questions always is being asked is, can AI create any IP, any patent or invention or any creative output? Can AI own that so-called invention? And there are some court rules now, even in states in different parts. I think I remember in New Zealand,
yeah.
AI cannot be owner of the so-called any creation, any patent, any invention. But in WIPO, in WIPO, we have yearly, time-to-time conversations on these hot topics. Like in the past, we had on the frontier technologies, we had very recently, at the end of the March, we had on the metaverse. For this one, for generative AI, in September, we are going to have it will be hybrid format. In Geneva, we will have this conversation, and all the experts from around the world, they will come to Geneva, and maybe with some of them virtual participation. This topic will be discussed, and I think we need some rules and regulations to so-called to adjust and to work on this AI, that we can use it for the benefit of human beings.
Yes.
And we should be also careful about that.
Yes. The question is open to all the panelists, but Tita, you mentioned sometime about the future of work, and then you passed also this subject, please.
Before that, may I acknowledge the presence of our ambassador as well.
Excellent.
We have Indonesian ambassador for Kazakhstan, Mr. Fajrul Rahman there. Thank you for being here, sir. So, about AI, as in with other new technology that human being face, there's always risk, there's always opportunities, and you mentioned about, yes, because within the context of creative economy, because we at the global level has been trying to push in these issues as one of the main issues that can be put on the table along with other economic sectors. So starting in G20 in Riyadh 2020, there's already with Urban 20 policy recommendation called Inclusive Creative Economy and the Future of Work. And there the argument was that young people who are mostly, especially in the global south, we are still dominating, they should be able to face the future by also utilizing this technology, but in a balanced way. So they tend to be generation that are agile, but they should be also resourceful, because otherwise, because I mentioned earlier that we are in a very many thousands of islands, and sometimes you get the technology, but you don't get the mindset yet. And that's the dangerous thing. So people can use you. Yes. So later, the year after, at the G20 in Italy, there's Think Tank 20 producing this policy recommendation, Creative Economy 2030, Inclusive and Resilient Creative Economy for Sustainable Development and Recovery. And it's this 2021, of course, we talk about recovery because the pandemic was there. But then again, we talk about technology in the sense of digital transformation. And that's also still a challenge to have an equal development on it. Last year in Indonesia, where we were hosting G20, Urban 20 produced this recommendation called People and the Next Economy, Recovering Together. And at the same time, as I mentioned before, the WCC produced the Bali Roadmap, Inclusive Creative, a Global Recovery. But then the most also interesting thing is, especially for us at the South and South countries, because at the Global Creative Economy Council, we also made a collective research about informal economy and the culture in the Global South. This involved the country Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Egypt, Kenya, India, Indonesia, and South Africa, because informal economy for one country would mean different from another. And well, like Daniel said earlier, maybe it is the term how you avoid tax, but then for us, it's because we are still rich of capital, social capital, and that's where informal economy is, and they don't want to be formal, And then that's why the research pointed at this entity called intermediary that is important in this world of creative economy as the connector between all the actors at the grassroots level and the policy. And then talking about AI, this intermediary should also be the one who should be wise enough to choose where you're using that. And in the academic sense as well, you can either use this technology as your assistance or you want to use it as maybe evil things, I don't know. But then you should be resourceful enough about your choice.
Thank you. Daniel, quick response.
Well, yeah, so just two things to say about that. First, yes, I realize it's topic number one, AI, and not because it helps us so much and it increases productivity, etc., but because of the threats it's bringing. And I love this quote by Paul Graham, who is the founder of Y Combinator, and he said, with nuclear technology, people who know the technology very well, they say, look, it's safe. People who don't know technology are worried. With AI, people who don't know the technology say, okay, it's good, it's developing, it's funny, Midjourney is good. But people who really understand the technology are very worried. And first of all, we need to talk about AI alignment, and we should talk about it a lot, because without it, the threat is real, and we're not talking about, tens of years. I think it's too late to discuss the future, like what will happen in 20 years. We should be discussing what will happen until the end of this year. I think by the September, when you have this conference, we'll have a totally different world with this AI. So it's not clear how to build a program even now, because something may come up in August, which we don't expect at all. And point number two, I think it's very important now to realize who we are as humans. I think we are, at the same time, while we're developing technologies, AI and all that, it's very important to understand what really makes us valuable as the inhabitants of this planet. And I think we'll have more and more businesses like human-to-human businesses, human-to-human interactions. This will be a true luxury. The fact that we are sitting here today and we can talk face-to-face is already a luxury, and we just need to appreciate it more.
Absolutely, Daniel. David, if you would like to react to something?
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, as we all know, AI will change the world, especially when it comes to things that computers and AI are very good at, sort of algorithms and methodologies. So I think of the family doctor. A lot of what family doctors do is analysis. Why does your leg hurt? Could it be this? Could it be that? No, yes. And they narrow it down and end up with a prescription. I think AI can do that, but it's going to be able to do that much more quickly. But again, it comes back to what are humans good at that AI isn't so good at, and that's the human touch. So it's what in medicine they call the bedside manner, the compassion of the doctor in explaining to you carefully but clearly what is the matter, what you must do. And I think, I've been thinking of this in relation to my creativity workshops. People think that generating new ideas is just a human thing, human ingenuity, imagination. You go in the shower in the morning and you come out with a brilliant idea, and that does happen. But in my workshops, I use methodologies. For half a day in a group, we can, by using certain games and certain thought processes, we can generate 100 new ideas. So maybe AI will do that in the future. But I think we then, in the second part, need to make human judgment about which ones of these ideas are feasible. And then we narrow it down. After having lots of fun generating 100 ideas, we use logic to narrow it down to one or two. And that's where judgment comes in. Is this true to our values? Is this something that our company should do? Is it something we want to do? And as we discuss those things, there's a lot of human interaction and emotional intelligence in how we deal with people within a team. So I'm just figuring out, whether I've still got a job in terms of the creativity and idea generation workshops, and then putting those into practice. I think I have for the moment, but who knows?
Excellent,
Thank you.
David. And I think it's been a great reflection and a lot of thoughts that it's been pouring here in this panel. I want to thank all the panelists, to thank the minister, because he has gave us such gorgeous venue and this incredible space to think about creative economy. And thank, of course, everybody that's watching on the live feed and present here at the forum. Thank you so much. Thank you.